You're listening to Elevate, the official podcast of Elite Agent magazine for real estate industry sales professionals, property managers and leaders. Each episode we bring you behind the scenes coaching, news analysis, exclusive interviews, technology and more to help you list more, sell more and elevate your results. To subscribe to the magazine, visit eliteagent.com.au/subscribe. Here is your host, Samantha McLean.
Hey, Samantha McLean from Elite Agent Magazine, proud to bring you our weekly news recap for the week of the 27th of October. This week we're going to talk about automation and how it will affect the industry, new sorts of addressing systems, tips for presentations, emotional intelligence, plus news and much more. And once again, it's hello to Mark Edwards, and not for the first time today.
It's not for the first time, but that's a lot we're going to get through today.
I know, two months, 27th of October, 2 months to Christmas.
Who would have thunk it? Jeez, it's come around quick, hasn't it?
I know, that's the last we'll say of that this morning. So There's plenty happening this week.
Yeah, there sure is. And, I'll tell you what, there's been a lot that's come out of Victoria this week. First of all, REIV's got themselves a new president, Richard Simpson.
Yeah, well, they had their awards ball last night.
They did.
And I was really pleased to see some of the really good guys in Victoria get up. So Matt Scafidi from Noel Jones.
Well done, Matt.
Well done, Matt. Adrian Butera, of course, from Compton Green. They've been, I met Adrian a few years ago at another award ceremony, actually, and very innovative office, Compton Green.
Yeah.
And, for him to get the President's Award, that's really well deserved.
Well done.
So congratulations to all of those award winners from the REIV.
Stockies also had their awards the other night as well, and we reported on their high achievers across the network, so congratulations to those guys as well.
It is all happening in Victoria this week because they've got 1,900 homes expected to go under the hammer this weekend.
Yeah, so they're saying that's the REIV is reporting that's going to be probably record-breaking numbers.
But is that because they want to get it out of the way before Melbourne Cup weekend?
Well, typically that usually happens. Look, it's there's big numbers all across the country. They're talking there's going to be about 3,500 auctions this weekend. Haven't seen those that sort of numbers since April, just before Easter, the Easter long weekend. But they're CoreLogic are also predicting that this could potentially be the largest weekend from a volume perspective moving.
Yeah, well, I suppose, look, if you want to get your house, if you want to get settled and moved, then it's got to be now.
If you want to be before Christmas,
next weeks. So, we do expect. So for all you guys
Actually, could you make it before Christmas? 8 weeks.
Yeah, 8 weeks, short settlement maybe. I don't know. But for all you guys running around,
best of luck, guys.
Best of luck. Hope you have a good Saturday. So what else is going on in the news?
One thing that caught my eye was Patrick Martin from Remax Brisbane Riverside. He had a really interesting solution for getting additional people through the open home.
So he had, Sophie Monk is not the only person that can call a tenor in to attract attention, right? So he had an operatic tenor perform at his open homes and drew a few crowds. Yeah,
it looked, from the photos that were sent through, it looked absolutely a cracker, and it sounds like he's going to be getting to do that again. And Clint Smith from McGrath in Noosa, he also put on a few moves, so a bit more of the dance moves.
Yeah, and weren't they fantastic? Like, he's actually a really, really good dancer, and apparently, from what I heard, it'd be great to have a chat to him, actually, but he's a TV star now.
Yeah.
But apparently the vendor, he was quite close to the vendor, and the vendor knew that he could bust a move, and convinced him that it was a good thing to do, along with the videographers. And I thought that the result was outstanding.
Listening video, wasn't it?
Yeah, I watched that video this morning, and
even the Today Show picked it up. So obviously it's been seen far and wide.
Yeah, it has. Well, it has been seen far and wide, and it almost convinced me to come dancing into the office today, but nobody wants to see that, right?
Oh, no, Sammy, I'd love to see it. There was also some interesting news from Ray White Marine. I wasn't actually aware that Ray White had a division that does luxury yachts. Yeah. Right. I actually looked them up, and there's some stunning boats there. Anyway, Brock Rodwell, it was almost like a bit of a Mission Impossible.
I was just about to say, should I be cueing the dun, 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 dun. Yep.
Anyway, so the story goes is that one of his clients in Brisbane was looking for a luxury yacht, found it in St. Petersburg, and it was literally a cloak and dagger thing to get this boat out. It was all done legitimately, but I tell you what, it was some amazing things those guys went through to be able to get this boat.
From Russia.
Yeah, it was absolutely incredible. Even from the point of signing the deed on a dated newspaper, showing the GPS coordinates in the middle of the Adriatic or somewhere. It was probably wasn't the Adriatic, but it was somewhere in the middle of the water.
Another story of agents going above and beyond the call of duty.
Beyond the call, yeah, exactly.
What else? So Harcourt's have got their own custom store, their own custom Apple store, really. They've developed their own member-facing store with their own apps.
A lot of interest in that one.
Yeah, pretty convenient, I think, for Harcourt's franchisees that they can just go straight to their own branded store. I didn't even know you could do that.
Yeah, look, I've heard of a few corporates doing it, and that they almost create themselves, it's almost like a catalogue of the frequently used apps. I think Ian Campbell was talking about in one of our sessions, so about the proliferation of apps that we get in our business, and sort of it's very easy just to go and I'll just download that and I'll just use that, give that a crack. But I think what they've done is go to the point of being able to create an environment that is just this is what you need to use.
I mean, it's really hard. You go online and you search for something. It might be productivity app, and 20 of them come up, and so which one do you choose? So it's the same as sort of trying to hunt for something online these days. I think curating content is getting harder and harder.
Absolutely, there's so much out there, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. Also in news this week, REA Group have relaunched their Agent Advantage program.
Yeah, we had a chat with Andrew Reckman about Azil had a chat with Andrew Reckman, and look, there's 5 different pillars that they've put in there, and even to the point, I think it was gelato vans that are going to be coming around to auction. So
who doesn't love gelato in summer?
Well, that's it. Who wants a coffee in summer? So it's now gelato. So well done, guys, there for some kicking off that initiative, and I think it will be great to see how that pays dividends back to the industry.
Yeah, fantastic. And I can hardly believe that it's only 3 weeks yesterday to the area awards. So there were some REA people in here yesterday that sort of turned the cameras on me. No. I was honoured to be a judge this year, and some outstanding entries that came in for the areas. It's really interesting these days because some of the questions that they asked me were around what makes you stand out as a marketer, and standing out used to be the domain of the big companies with the deep pockets, and I think now the playing field has really been levelled.
Oh, it has, hasn't it?
With all the tools that we just talked about being available and in the cloud and cost effective, and your small one-man agent can actually compete with the bigger agents,
the big production studios.
So long as you sort of can make someone feel something. So
exactly, and sometimes it gets to the point where you just got your creativeness is the boundary. So there really is a whole lot of things that you can do on your own bat with a lot of these apps. It's amazing what you can do out of Canva these days.
Oh yeah, I sometimes hack Canva myself. Like we do have a designer here at Elite Agent, obviously, but for the magazine and stuff like that. But Canva's a lifesaver for social media stuff and blog posts and all that sort of stuff. So,
but it does actually sort of beg the question as to how much you actually do yourself and how much time you spend in doing stuff yourself, because there was a survey which came out, basically identified that real estate industry professionals were probably one of the hardest working professionals there are.
I think it was in the Sydney Morning Herald this week, actually. So they did a study based on professions and how many hours they spend at the office. And, if you're a fan of legal shows like I am, The Good Wife, you always see them burning the midnight oil and all that sort of thing. And
Suits.
Suits, of course. Harvey Specter's always hard at work late at night. So you do see that, or you're led to believe that accountants and lawyers and people like that spend long hours, and they do. I mean, I'm from professional services background from way back. There's no question of that. But they did find that real estate agents actually spend longer hours working.
Yeah, they're saying the average is about 49, 50 hours, which only 19% of what you would traditionally perceive as being the long hour working professions. Only 19% of them did those equivalent hours. But
so you have to ask, is that a good thing? Yeah,
I don't know. Look, the question is whether we have the right work-life balance, or whether it's just what it is that we need to do.
I think it's like, it's that age-old question of, Tom Panos often says, if you don't know the security codes, then you're not working hard enough. But then, are you working hard on the right things or the wrong things? And I think therein, it's different for different people.
Yeah, and I don't think there is a one-size-fits-all, is there?
No, there's not. And what I will say about that whole study and everything is, for the people that say real estate agents are not hardworking people, you know, those other muppets in the media that like to have a go, well, now you've got some evidence that that is absolutely not the case.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I think, so we've also had a couple of scenarios during the week where we've spoken with Amy Engelman from BPO and also Ian Campbell from AIR. There's a number of opportunities out there now that you can actually get rid of some of those non-productive, dollar-productive activities that you do, which can give you a little bit more balance back in your life, so you're not actually doing the stuff that you don't need to do yourself.
Yeah, well, Fiona sort of says, what is your hourly rate, or what do you enjoy doing as your highest purpose? And if you're doing something of a value that is less than your hourly rate, provided that you're not in startup mode, then you should consider outsourcing. That's a good rule.
So we had a couple of other things that came across the desk this week, and particularly some really interesting ones on the technology front.
A couple of weeks ago, we had this yarn about Walmart taking over a small security company, so that you could buy your groceries online and the person could actually
that's right.
deliver them to the door.
Yep.
So obviously Amazon's had a good look at that, and now they've...
We'll play too.
Yes, we'll play, Eddie. So they've launched a service called Amazon Key, which is a smart lock fitted to a door, as well as a security camera in the cloud. So this is Amazon, the giant, going into the security business. Yep.
There's no realms that aren't touched by some of these some of the larger players. I wonder when Google will get in the game as well. But anyway, Amazon Key.
I think there's a lot of hilarious scenarios around this, let's face it. So Amazon have sort of said there's a problem with parcel theft.
Yeah, yes. Okay, so that's where it all came from.
So there's a problem with parcel theft, and the solution is to let people into your home without you being there.
Yes, folks, you've heard it here. Look, I don't know. The whole premise is they'll give you a passcode that the Amazon or the FedEx or whoever, Star Trek, will be able to open your door, put the parcel just inside the door, close the door, and off they go. Amazon are saying they're going to have Cloud Cam, which will activate the moment that the Amazon door key will open, so you can see what's going to be happening. So when said parcel delivery guy opens the door, what happens to the pooch? I don't know.
Well, if you've got pets at home, right, and someone just lets themselves in, they're a stranger. Yeah. What happens
if you've
got a Great Dane, at the door? What's the Great Dane going to do?
I think it's probably going to be a bit of difference between a Doberman or a Labrador. The Labrador probably just love them to death.
I think there's a few things to sort out there, but where this is going with the Internet of Things kind of reminds me of, I remember at ARPM a couple of years ago, we were sort of looking at the future, which we'll be looking at again at our event in a couple of weeks. It's interesting that if you're able to open the home remotely, what's to say that a property manager couldn't open the home remotely? Like, what's to say that in the future, and this is kind of what I was alluding to a year or a year and a half ago, is you're sitting in front of a
crystal ball out.
Yeah, when I had my crystal ball out, it comes out once a year. You're sitting there with a dashboard, and you can see your properties on the dashboard on, let's just say, a map, and you can see which doors are open. I think that will be part of the capabilities that you'll have in property management in the future.
Oh, look, I totally agree. There's a couple of agencies. I think there's one in Victoria that are playing with lock boxes, which, for the uninitiated, you put a box which goes around the doorknob, where you can put a key to the house inside the lock box, and there's a code, a pin, that opens up the box, and you can use the key. So what this Amazon Key does, so it just actually removes the entire need for the lock boxes, and it's like one-time security passcodes, all this sort of stuff, which basically sort of says, I will give you, Mr. Tradie, a one-time security code to go inside and fix the leaking tap. The moment you walk through the door, the camera will go on, your path will be tracked and your time will be tracked, and the moment you close the door, then that's when that code then disappears.
Then the light goes on your dashboard when the tradie's fixed your internet-enabled device.
That's right. Well, look, there's a lot of exciting things that can happen, and I think it's going to really change the way in which preventative maintenance in a PM environment is going to save time, cost, money. I think it's going to be a very, very interesting time to live in.
So if you're wondering why we're sort of still talking about remote locking and unlocking and internet-able devices and all of that sort of thing, what is happening here is that somebody else is solving a problem that impacts the real estate industry, and this is how a lot of trends happen, is there's a consumer problem out there, Amazon are solving that consumer problem, all of a sudden people end up with locks that are able to be accessed remotely, and then all of a sudden with those tools that have been installed for a different purpose, not for buying or selling, actually going to affect the real estate industry. So it's going to be a case of, well, does the home have this functionality? Yes, well, that's a premium price. If the home has this, then, you know...
And is it a premium price for the actual property? And then, therefore, does it then offer the opportunity to be able to have a lower cost of management, because you won't have to worry about keys and you won't have to worry about sort of devices that are failing, because you will pre-know all this information.
It's an interesting one. I mean, because open home, like let's face it, open homes, you want to be there with people, you want to be talking to them and building those relationships. So how does that trend in the future? Because I'm sure it will happen. There will come a time when we're all
the self-guided tour, the self-guided open home,
or we're just sticking our faces up to our doors and something internet enabled recognises our faces. It's coming with the iPhone X, facial recognition security. So there will come a time when we won't need anything else. We won't need someone to let us into the home. So how do we then build relationships outside? I mean, it's interesting questions that we're not going to answer We're not going to answer today, but it's food for thought.
Exactly.
Also, on the automation side, very popular trending online this week was Ian Campbell, so technology guru. Like, he's worked for some of the big companies like Console and Ray White and people like that. And so now he's into digital assistants.
Yeah, I had the pleasure of having a chat with Ian earlier on this week when I popped up to Brisbane and did the Transform Masters session with him. And that conversation was very broad, very wide. We'll be cutting that down into a podcast in the coming week or so. But one of the things which he spoke about was his digital assistant called Rita, which I actually asked him why Rita. And he said it was a lot easier to be able to put a name to this than just to explain it as artificial intelligence. So we've actually got Ian coming along having a chat about Rita as being a digital employee and what you can do to employ a digital employee and what Rita can actually do. And I was actually astounded as to what you can actually outsource to a digital employee, and then combine that with what you could potentially outsource to an offshore employee, and then what that frees up your on-site employees to actually do, such as the things like sort of physical inspections, face-to-face with your clients. Again, what we were talking about earlier on is freeing up yourself from the non-dollar productive activity, so you can actually be more productive and have a bit more of a balance in what it is that you do. So I think it was quite amazing as to what Rita was capable of doing.
Yeah. Well, someone that doesn't necessarily always do physical inspections is the team at Remax Regency on the Gold Coast, who, of course, were our cover story for EPM this issue. That's Kushler, Justin, Kushler and Justin. And if you think 3D is not for property management, think again, because they had some really clever ways of using that, didn't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And it wasn't just for open homes or the virtual open home. They actually used it as part of the inspection. The landlord, who in Queensland or their particular area was not necessarily always local, their area does have the opportunity to be able to have a lot of remote owners. So the owner is actually able to see a condition report in real time and maybe be able to have a good look around their investment. What they also said, though, was they used it as part of the entry condition report, and it really cut down on their dispute side of things, because you really can't dispute what you can see.
No, well, that's it. And you can, these things, we saw them at Inman, they are so detailed. You can zoom right in, and the level of detail that you're going to get is much better than any sort of regular camera.
And it's a timeless record as well.
Yeah.
So it's a point in time that's captured, but it's something that sort of can't. It's really not open for negotiation or for interpretation.
Well, you can have side by side.
Yeah, exactly. So they also said that it was actually really clever, or not clever. It was really useful in being able to mediate disputes about damage and sort of end of lease and all that sort of stuff, because then you can do a before and after comparison. And they found that the tenants were a lot more amiable to stumping up to any repairs that might need to be done. There was a hell of a lot less dispute. So that was interesting. But what was the biggest article during the week was the 5 trends that will impact real estate in the future. That was written in the lead agent side of the magazine by Chris Rolls.
And he's all about the technology. So he picked 5 trends that he thought would impact real estate in the future. One being data and knowing which house in the street's going to sell next. So that's a big data trend that we've talked about. Commissions declining, that's not good news, but that was one of the things that he talked about. Even less popular a concept is he's saying that personal relationships will not be necessary to sell or manage property in the future. So what he's saying is that Alexa, things like Alexa, which we didn't actually specifically talk about Alexa when we were talking about Amazon, but what you really are going to need to do is to build relationships. You're going to need to get Google to recommend you.
Yeah, exactly. And we've spoken about that a number of times, particularly with the interceptors and being able to be up there as the local expert in your area and be recognised by Google as that.
Yeah, and speaking of interceptors, number 4 was about different ways of selling and managing property, which we dealt with a couple of weeks ago in great detail. One of the things he talked about was Open Door. So Open Door, incredibly cashed up. What they do is they go in, in particular states, they already know what the property's worth. They'll go in, offer cash, and they have got very deep pockets. And very, very deep pockets, and they'll do the place up and flip it for a profit.
And they do it in a very short period of time as well. So, you know, and it's a very incredibly short settlement time. It's got a lot of traction in the States. I think, was it Zillow that we were also looking at doing a very similar thing as well, that we saw at Inman? So
instant offers, or something
instant offers,
like that.
I think it was. So there's a lot of interesting things that are happening there, but the Open Door is very much around, I want to sell my house, I want to sell it quickly, I want to sell it for whatever I can get for it, and these guys basically, in reality, it's a relatively low ball number, but it's realistic. But what they do is they do the place up and then sell it for a profit, and just adds to their kitty, and they just keep on rolling.
Yeah, it's just Cherie Barber maths, isn't it? Really. Okay, and then the last one being that that the machines are coming. So, you know, back when Chris was in his Rental Express days, he was one of the first agents to really dabble in outsourcing, which we've talked about today. So, you know, again, I think the message there is to sort of stay abreast of what's going on in the industry and, you know, take advantage of these things where it makes sense to.
Yeah, absolutely. We've had a couple of podcasts out this week. We've had Chris Hanley's podcast, which has come out.
Yeah, so this was the extended session with Chris. We did have some highlights from Chris's session out on video a couple of weeks ago, but this was the extended one. And still ringing in my head is what he said about good works. And he explained it like this, is that you either give to get or you give to give. And there's a really big difference between the two. So when you're giving to get, you're expecting recognition from someone. And when you give to give, it's a completely selfless act. And the two of them are completely different. And interestingly enough, you know, he said when you start up in real estate, you can't actually give money. It's about giving yourself.
That's the word he used, toil. You can give toil.
You can give toil. And, you know, and it's a beautiful idea that you as a business person can go and help some of the local people in the community with what they're doing from a business angle. And I've said it before, you know, in terms of marketing, real estate agents are actually really, really good at marketing. That's one thing that we're all pretty good at because it's our bread and butter. But, you know, the local coffee shop down the road isn't necessarily as good at marketing as you are. So there is a win-win in there in that you can help them market their business and get to know their customers at the same time.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
That's, you know, like, but you shouldn't approach it from the giving to get. You should approach it as giving to give. And we also had an extended podcast out from Julie Masters. Now, I really enjoyed this one and I actually used some of her tips this week. So she talked a lot about presentations. So if you want some tips in presenting to people, this is a really good podcast to listen to, and don't think of it as just presenting on stage. But how this came about actually is because on the way into Transform Masters, when we were asking people to apply, we also asked them to tell us what their biggest issues were. And what kept coming up over and over again is that employees and things like that didn't take their bosses seriously enough. So obviously it is hard work being a leader sometimes. Sometimes you just want to be liked. We know that ourselves. Other times you've just got to get the job done and be a leader. Otherwise there's no business. It's hard. And so what our leaders did say to us is that how do we have those difficult conversations when we're feeling nervous, when we're feeling emotional, when we're feeling all those different sorts of things? So Julie had some great tips. One was that great TED Talk video where, she said, assume the power pose. And that's fantastic. You put your hands up if you're not feeling confident. I'm putting my hands up now. And if I'm flying, Jack, I'm flying. But apparently if you stay in that position for 2 minutes, then actually having a confident body posture actually leads to more confidence. So if you're waiting around in front of that open for a difficult vendor right now, just put your arms out like Superman.
Act like a tree.
Act like a tree. And, you'll find you'll feel better in 2 minutes or your arms will fall off, one of the two. The other thing she sort of said is that in some of the difficult meetings, you've got to start with your intention. Like, what is your intention to get out of the meeting? And once you're very clear, crystal clear on that intention, then your actions lead towards that. So is your intention to raise the topic of salary? Is your intention to help someone sell their home? Is your intention to help someone make a profit on their investment? Like, what is your intention when you walk in the door? And there was a lot of the guys that actually called me this week in their coaching sessions, like Jess Kint, for example, who's a BDM in Harcourts up in Queensland. And she said even those things really helped. But then the other thing is that power of three. So apparently our brains are wired to, think in threes or fives. So if you're going into a listing presentation, well, here's the things I want to talk about. Yep. In my old PwC days, I used to always sort of start with, I know you're busy, I'm going to take 15 minutes of your time. How can I best help you today? And get that off the table and then say, great, well, let's talk about that. And then the three things I want to talk about are this, this and this. And that's a left brain, right brain thing that actually puts people at ease. And it also gets their objections out first go. So there's heaps of good stuff in there. Try Amy Cuddy's theory on power posing. It's fantastic. I love everything about Julie Masters. I'm a fan.
Yeah, it was a good listen, wasn't it?
Absolutely. Last but not least, we also had a short video with Ushtanak, who is our in-house emotional intelligence expert at the moment and very, very popular.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think so there was a great conversation that she's going to start up there around how you can actually get the best out of your employees and best out of your team using emotional intelligence.
So there's some good tips from her there, and of course we've announced her last week as speaking at our event.
Yeah, nice last-minute addition there. We were hoping that she was going to be able to join us.
Well, she wasn't available, and then her schedule changed, so it was really good that we could get her on board.
Absolutely. And we also had Ewan Morton from Morton Real Estate. He was able to give us a little bit of his view on the world in an article that he wrote for us.
Well, he sounds himself, like from that interview that Azil did with him, he's a very emotionally intelligent leader, like really cares about the people. And interestingly, part of that interview is that they do some predictive. Morton's a massive company now, eight offices, and Ewan himself has a background in professional services in IBM, which of course is a very different kettle of fish. So in terms of hiring people, like he's not just about what the behaviour is like now, but about predicting behaviour in the future, like how are they going to fit in, how are they going to stand out in the marketplace, all of that sort of thing. So he had some really interesting stuff to say there as well, and he's going to be at our event on November the 14th talking about some incentive plans, because it's not always money.
No, absolutely not. And again, this gets back to the emotional intelligence side of things. What actually is going to be motivating your staff?
Is it recognition?
You would naturally think that money is always going to be the number one thing, but it isn't. And Ewan's going to be talking about what are the right incentive plans that you can put in place that in sort of a number of times is not monetary.
So that's about it for this week. Is there anything else on the agenda here, or should we sign off and let people get back to their days?
The only thing I need to basically sort of bring up again is the Pimp My Shop front. Applications are closing soon, so get in there. It's really simple to apply. Take a pic of the front of your shop. Give us some rough dimensions and tell us why your shop front needs a makeover. And our friends of Vitrine Media are going to stump up 10 grand to do a full installation, and we're not talking over sort of sometime in the next 20 years. We're talking within a month or two of the winner being announced, which is going to be in mid to late November.
Yeah, so it's like it'll be
applications closed mid-November. The winner announced late November. So get onto it, guys. It's going to be a fantastic competition, and if you want to see what it actually looks like, go to eliteagent.com.au/shopfront, and you can see a time lapse of the installation we did for First National Gerringong last year.
Yeah, it looks brilliant. And I'll tell you what, I love, if anyone's been to our office, they'll have seen our covers in reception, like they're actually on Vitrine Media A3 screens. So, you know, like when people walk in, they're fronted with, you know, Gavin Rubinstein staring down at them, which is pretty cool. Like, we love our screens. Yeah,
just gone up too. So thanks, Mike, to the team. Looking fantastic as usual.
Well, that's it for this week. I hope you've all had a great week, and I hope you have a great weekend, and I hope that the sun stays out and the umbrellas stay away.
Yeah, I know. Excellent. Have a great weekend, guys.
See you next time.
To subscribe to the magazine, visit eliteagent.com.au/subscribe.